In the annals of World War II aviation, no machine symbolized American industrial might and the sheer, relentless courage of its crews quite like this one. It was colossal, slow, and flew in formations so massive they darkened the sun. It was the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress. The B-17 was not built for speed or elegance, it was built to absorb punishment and keep flying. It flew deep into the heart of Hitler's Germany, facing relentless attacks from the Luftwaffe and torrents of flak. Time and again, B-17s returned to base, shot to ribbons, missing entire sections of wing or tail, their crews freezing, bleeding, but alive. This aircraft was the cornerstone of America's strategic daylight bombing campaign, the mission to destroy Germany's ability to wage war. It was a mission that cost thousands of lives but ultimately decided the air war. This is the story of the B-17 Flying Fortress, the bomber whose resilience broke the Luftwaffe and earned its legendary name. The B-17 was designed in the mid-1930s with a radical, controversial belief that a large bomber, heavily armed with machine guns, could defend itself without fighter escort. This concept was the foundation of the American doctrine of daylight precision bombing. The goal was to hit key strategic targets, factories, oil plants, and railways, with accuracy during the day, a feat the British had largely abandoned due to heavy losses. The B-17's design was a revolutionary departure from existing bombers. It featured a sleek, sturdy airframe, 4 powerful engines, and most critically, a heavy defensive armament. Early models carried as many as 13 50 caliber machine guns, earning it the nickname Flying Fortress. However, this concept of self-defending formation was brutally tested in 1943. Early bombing raids into Germany without sufficient fighter protection led to staggering losses, forcing the U.S. 8th Air Force to re-evaluate their entire strategy. The B-17 was incredibly tough, but it was not invincible. The true defense of the B-17 was not a single machine. It was the formation, specifically the combat box. This geometric, tightly packed formation was a genius of collective defense. Flying wingtip to wingtip, each B-17 covered its neighbor with overlapping fields of fire. A single German fighter attacking the formation faced a terrifying wall of over 150 caliber machine guns firing simultaneously. The tail gunner was the most exposed and crucial position, constantly battling the head-on attacks that German aces preferred. The crew, a 10-man team including the pilot, bombardier, navigator, and 6 dedicated gunners, operated in freezing, unpressurized cabins often for 10 hours straight. The combat box tactic was successful, but it demanded incredible flying discipline and immense physical endurance from the crews. They flew through extreme turbulence created by the thousands of aircraft, constantly battling the freezing cold and the ever-present threat of German attack. The B-17's legend rests on its ability to survive punishment that would destroy any other aircraft. The engineers built in massive structural redundancy. The wings were constructed with multiple load-bearing spars. The horizontal and vertical stabilizers were oversized. It was a rugged, heavy, over-engineered design. Pilots' testimonies are filled with stories of miraculous survival, B-17s returning with engines on fire, giant holes in the fuselage, and even a case where the entire nose was ripped off by flak. The most famous example is the All-American, a B-17 that returned with its tail section nearly severed by a mid-air collision, held together only by the thinnest slivers of metal. This unbelievable toughness gave the crews a profound psychological edge. They knew, even when under heavy attack, that their fortress was built to last. This resilience became a massive drain on the German Luftwaffe, which found that shooting down one B-17 often required dozens of passes and colossal expenditure of ammunition. The ultimate goal of the B-17 campaign was Operation Point Blank, the sustained combined bomber offensive targeting the core of Germany's aviation industry. The mission was brutal. The famous August 1943 raid on the Schweinfurt ball-bearing factories became known as Black Thursday. The unescorted B-17 formations were annihilated by over 300 German fighters. 77 B-17s were destroyed, with nearly 600 airmen killed or captured. It was the single most devastating loss of the air war. This near catastrophe proved the failure of the self-defending doctrine. The raids were temporarily halted, but the strategic impact was massive. The Allies were forced to develop long-range escort fighters, leading directly to the introduction of the P-51 Mustang. When the B-17s returned to Schweinfurt in 1944, they were covered by the Mustangs. The losses were drastically reduced. The B-17 delivered the payload, and the P-51 destroyed the enemy fighters. This combination was the ultimate strategic partnership that broke the Luftwaffe's ability to defend its factories. Behind the machine was a story of human sacrifice. The air war over Germany was the deadliest campaign of the entire U.S. war effort. An American B-17 airman's chance of completing his 25-mission tour was barely 1 in 4. The crews faced cold so intense that their fingers would freeze to the metal guns, oxygen failures at high altitude, and the terrifying realization that their fate depended entirely on the 2 bomber crews flying on their wingtips. The average age of the B-17 crew was just 20 years old. These young men had to fight frostbite, boredom, terror, and the relentless, suffocating pressure of knowing that every mission could be their last. Their mission was simple: drop the bombs and get the B-17 home. The psychological bond between the 10 men on board was absolute. They were a fortress crew, bound by shared danger and collective defiance. By 1945, the B-17 and its successor, the B-24 Liberator, had decimated Germany's industrial heartland. They delivered nearly 640,000 tons of bombs on enemy targets, crippling the German war effort and preparing the ground for the D-Day invasion. The success of the strategic bombing campaign was directly attributed to the sheer numbers and incredible toughness of the B-17. It kept flying when others would have quit. The B-17 Flying Fortress remains the iconic symbol of American air power in WWII. It represents the courage of the American airman, the might of American industry, and the simple, enduring principle that if you build a machine strong enough, it will carry you home. The fortress was unbreakable, and its legacy remains the standard for all heavy bombers that followed.